centuries. You don't know where you land. It's so dark in mythology. Treasures of history to be found. Hear the legends of time. All the handiworks remain. Only the dream away. Orion,
Season 11 started on the 15th of December 1973 and ended on the 8th of June 1974. It's the end of Pertwee's time on the show and the beginning of Elizabeth Sladen's as Sarah Jane Smith. Sarah Jane is the third iconic Classic Who companion. She's a journalist, and unlike Jo Grant, she's clever and competent. But just like Jo Grant, I'm not really sure of her appeal. I don't dislike her. She's fine, it's not like a Rose situation, but I just don't understand her appeal. Having said that, her spin-off from New Who, The Sarah Jane Adventures, is the best Doctor Who spin-off ever made. Miles ahead of K9 and Company, Torchwood, and that Australian K9 show. We open with a revamped intro. This look carried over to Tom Baker's era, probably the single most iconic intro the show ever had. And the season begins with the four-part The Time Warrior. A Sontaran called Lynx has crashed into medieval England and has kidnapped scientists from the future to repair his ship. He's also claimed the Earth for the glory of the Sontaran Empire.
By virtue of my authority as an officer of the Army Space Corps, I hereby claim this planet, its moons and satellites, for the greater glory of the Sontaran Empire.
You can't claim us, we live here. 500 million of us. Do you have a flag?
The Sontarans are a brilliant creation from Robert Holmes. Many of his best stories and creations are actually semi-subtle parodies of something that was pissing him off at the time. And the Sontarans are no different. They're a commentary on soldiery, colonialism and uniformity, and believe it or not, the only reason we pronounce the race Sontaran and not Sontaran is because Kevin Lindsay, who played Lynx, was an Australian and that's how he pronounced it. And he knew best because he was one. At least that's what he told the director during an argument about the pronunciation while they filmed this. I think you'll agree his logic was impeccable. The Sontarans are one of the races that throughout the classic series got worse looking with every story. At times the masks weren't even touching the actors' faces. Sometimes the casting people forgot that they're meant to be short. Luckily we don't need to deal with that right now. Lynx is the best looking Sontaran of the classic show. I'd even say he's better looking than the ones from the new show, but that's only because I really hate the blue costumes they wear. Make them silvery black and New Who will win. Easily. The Time Warrior is another great Robert Holmes script, a very strong opener for the season. The Invasion of the Dinosaurs is a six-parter, and I think the story that most perfectly captures the whole Pertwee era. It's earthbound, there are soldiers, there's an ecological subtext, the Doctor drives a funky vehicle, people are messing with time travel, and the monster effects are fucking terrible.
Good grief. It's a Stegosaurus.
The only thing that's missing is for Roger Delgado to waltz in and say, "It was me, the Master, the whole time!" It also throws a massive curveball when one of the regulars is revealed to have betrayed the heroes. Pretty damn unexpected in 1970s television. But I'm not going to go into that, because you should watch it for yourself. London's been evacuated due to mysterious dinosaur appearances, and there's a crazy conspiracy who aim to reverse time, destroy civilization, and rebuild. In short, this is the perfect Pertwee story. It's not the best, that's Inferno. It's not even the best this season, but it is the Pertweeest of all the Pertwee stories. Pertwee even looks like a parody of himself. Death to the Daleks is next. It's Pertwee's last story with the Daleks and is 4 episodes long. Humans have arrived on the planet Exelon to find a cure for a plague that's been killing people. The Daleks claim to have the same goal, but we all know that's bullshit. Unfortunately for the Daleks, there's a massive energy drain occurring on the planet, which means most of their weapons won't work. And so the Daleks and the humans are forced to work together. At least until the Daleks improvise. Now, in an earlier episode I'd commented that Terry Nation had a tendency to rejig his original Dalek stories to create new ones. And I stand by that. But, credit where credit's due, this is one of his more original Dalek stories. In fact, I'm not even sure it needs the Daleks in it at all. All in all, this is one of the more interesting late Pertwee stories. It doesn't quite work, but it's always nice to see them experimenting. I mean, much of the last episode features the Doctor taking on puzzles. It's not your usual Pertwee story. The next story is The Monster of Peladon. It's the sequel to The Curse of Peladon and lasts for 6 episodes. King Peladon is dead, and the planet has joined the Galactic Federation. But intrigue and politics vaguely based on real-world events keep happening as local miners go on strike to protest about how shittily they're being treated. There's more to it than that, but you'll have to see the story. This story sees the return of Alpha Centauri, the sentient full-body condom. It is nice to see actually alien-looking aliens every so often. The Ice Warriors also return. Their last appearance until Cold War in Season 7 of New Who. They were meant to appear with Colin Baker, but I'll get to that later. This story is, there. I don't have very strong feelings either way about it. If you like the idea of Star Trek Deep Space Nine done early 70s Doctor Who style, then check it out. If you don't like that idea, then it's not really a must-see. The final story of the season was Planet of the Spiders. It's 6 episodes long and introduced the term regeneration. You might remember how originally the Master was supposed to reappear and sacrifice himself in Pertwee's final story. Now obviously that didn't happen because of Roger Delgado's death, but Kismet Delgado, Roger's wife, makes an appearance as one of the spiders of the title. The events of this story were set up by the Doctor stealing the blue crystal from Metabulus 3 back in the Green Death, and he has to return it, even though it'll mean his own death. It's a nice way for 3 to go out, doing the right thing to correct an earlier mistake, something so small becoming so important down the line. His actions having unforeseen consequences. It's really good and dramatic. Of course, then during Hyde in Season 7 of New Who, the 11th Doctor reveals that he went back and stole another one. Or that 3 went back to return the crystal and received a fatal dose of radiation in the attempt, but forgot to actually return it. Either way, it looks really bad.
All the way from Metabulus 3.
And 11's attempt to cover it up by mispronouncing Metabulus is just silly. We also meet Kanpo, an elderly Time Lord who was the Doctor's mentor and moved to Earth to run a Tibetan Buddhist monastery. The producer, Barry Letts, at some point decided that the Time Lords were Buddhists. The spiders of the title also sometimes possess people, and we can see them holding onto their victims' backs, a la Donna in Turn Left. Now, I don't mean to indicate that New Who plagiarizes Classic Who, but it kinda does. Sometimes. Sorry. And about the plagiarism this time, I'm only referring to the imagery. The imagery of having a semi-invisible, evil invertebrate attached to your back, for reasons of sinisterness. So that's it for the 3rd Doctor. His was the most successful era the show had ever seen. Until the next guy turned up anyway. Like the rest of the show, Pertwee's whole run had its strengths and weaknesses. When it's earthbound, the stories are generally better but often samey. When they're in space, they're generally more interesting and imaginative, but usually not as good. The whole Pertwee era feels slightly more adult than the Hartnell or Troughton eras, and that'll continue as we go into the next season when the legend takes over. Tom fucking Baker. And yes, that is his middle name. Join me next time when we'll meet an iconic scarf, we'll spend much of a season without the TARDIS, and we'll have the first male companion in 5 years.
Measure